Hey guys, today we're talking about pistol red dot sights and how to choose the right one for you. There is a lot to unpack here, so let's jump right in. There are a few key factors to consider when choosing a pistol red dot, so I would recommend asking yourself a few questions first. What do I need this red dot for? What pistol am I going to be using? What is my budget? What weather conditions do I live in? And will it look cool on my gun? Which is arguably the most important question. I always like to determine the purpose of use first, which ties very closely to the pistol you're going to be using. An optic for your everyday carry may be different from the one you'd want to use for competitive shooting. I would say that most people prefer to carry a smaller gun for self-defense, so I would generally recommend a smaller red dot as well. On the other hand, if you're getting into competitive shooting, you'll probably want a bigger pistol and a bigger red dot. The choice of your optic also largely depends on whether your pistol is optics ready or not. Why? Because that affects your mounting options and available footprints. Let's say your pistol is optics ready. This usually means it has a factory-made cutout where you can mount your optic. Some pistols use a universal mounting interface, which allows you to change your pistol's footprint using adapter plates. The biggest advantage here is modularity, but it usually comes at a cost. You often need to buy the plates separately, and adapter plates also raise the red dot higher, which is not desirable for most people. That said, modern plate systems are much better than they used to be, and for most shooters they work perfectly fine. You'll also encounter pistols that come with a specific optic footprint straight from the factory. In this case, no adapter plate is needed and the optic sits a bit lower, which typically helps with co-witnessing and provides better alignment between the optic and the bore. This doesn't make the gun more accurate by itself, but it makes the dot easier to find and the gun more intuitive to shoot. The downside is that you're pretty much locked into a single footprint, which significantly limits your red dot selection. So, to each their own. Now, let's say you don't have an optics-ready pistol. What do you do then? The most common solution in this case is a dovetail red dot mount. A dovetail mount replaces the rear sight of your pistol, creating a mountable surface where you can attach your optic. These mounts are usually available with a specific red dot footprint, or you can find a universal one that you configure yourself. You can find more information about them in this video right here. And while you're there, you may also consider subscribing. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thanks! There are a few other mounting options, like frame mounts or underbarrel rail mounts, but these are quite specific and not very common. Now let's talk about the footprint itself. A footprint refers to a specific mounting interface of an optic. There are quite few of them, but some of the most common ones are Trijicon RMR, Shield RMSC, Leupold Delta Point Pro, or Doctor/Noblex, just to name a few. So to quickly recap, first, determine your use case. Second, identify your mounting options and available footprints. And with that, we can continue narrowing down our selection. Now is the time to filter out optics based on your budget. If you're just a hobby shooter and want to see what this is all about, I would recommend starting with something more affordable. For self-defense or competitive shooting, I would personally spend a bit more. The weather conditions you live in are also an important factor. One key decision here is whether to choose an open or a closed emitter red dot. Open emitter designs leave the emitter exposed, while closed emitter designs protect it behind glass. Most red dots today feature an open emitter design, which is perfectly fine in most cases. But if you live in particularly demanding environment, you may want to consider a closed emitter design, since the emitter is better protected from the elements. For example, rain, snow, mud or even sweat can block the emitter on an open design and make the dot disappear. The downside is that closed emitter optics usually have a smaller window, despite their larger size and higher price tag. Another important parameter to look at is the IP rating. This rating tells you under what conditions the manufacturer tested the device against solid particles and liquids. In other words, it shows how well the optic is protected against dust and water. A higher number generally means better protection, but always check the exact definitions online for your specific IP rating. For most civilian shooters, a basic level of water resistance is more than enough, but it's still good to know what your optic is rated for. Okay, we're almost done, but there are still a few things left to consider. I've been referring to these pistol optics as red dots, but they can also be green. I personally prefer a green dot over a red one, so it's important to check for yourself which one you prefer. Reticle size also matters. Many shooters prefer a 2 to 3 MOA dot for more precise shooting, since the dot covers less of the target. However, smaller dots can be harder to find during fast target acquisition. Dots around 6 MOA are usually preferred for self-defense, because they're quicker to pick up, but they're not ideal for longer distance precise shooting. Another important thing to consider is battery life. Before buying a red dot, it's a good idea to check the manufacturer's claimed battery life. And no matter what optic you choose, make it a habit to replace the battery regularly, before it runs out when you need it the most. This is especially important for self-defense use. Then there are the nice-to-have features, like motion sensors, anti-reflective coatings, solar panels, side-loading battery trays, automatic brightness adjustment or multi-reticle systems. Everyone has to decide which features are essential and which ones aren't that important. But the final and most important question still remains. Does it look cool to you? You're going to look at your red dot sight every single time you go to the range, so pick the one that you actually like. If you enjoy shooting it, you'll train more, and that's what really matters. Speaking of training, one important thing to mention is that switching to a red dot doesn't automatically make you a better shooter. There is a learning curve, especially when it comes to finding the dot consistently. With proper training, most shooters end up being faster and more precise, but it does take some practice, so keep that in mind. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.